Today's show is sponsored by Spoonflower. If you feel uninspired when shopping for fabric, wallpaper, and gift wrap at big box chain stores, then you need to check out Spoonflower. When you shop from thousands of designs in the Spoonflower marketplace, you'll be supporting a talented and devoted artist community, all while maintaining a slim, eco-footprint via Spoonflower's digital on-demand printing process. Walshy Naps podcast listeners can get 15% off your next Spoonflower order with the code ABBY15. That's ABBY15. Learn more at try.spoonflower.com/Abby. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show, Spoonflower. Welcome to episode 53 of the Walshy Naps podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Today, I'm in downtown Boston, visiting Gray's Fabrics with my guest, Jenny Rushmore. Jenny has a little office at the back of Gray's, and it's the perfect place to record a show about how to launch a sewing pattern business. If you don't know Jenny, she's a body-positive sewing blogger, and she recently also became a sewing pattern designer when she launched her company, Cashmerette Patterns, which creates curve-friendly patterns in sizes 12 to 28 and cup sizes C through H. How long ago did Cashmerette Patterns launch?
So it took me about a year from deciding that that's what I was going to do to the day of launch, which amazed me actually, because at the very beginning my goal was it's going to be a year, and it ended up being like almost a year to the day, which was great, kind of coincidental. But basically, I've known for a long time that there was this gap in the market. I'm a plus size. I'm kind of in the middle of that, I'm a little bit big in the straight size. I'm on the small end of plus size. But even at that, I really struggled finding sewing patterns that fit me without alterations. And even if they theoretically were my size, my bust didn't fit any of them at all. And that's because, most sewing patterns are either made for a B cup, or if you're really lucky, a C cup. And occasionally there are cup size ones up to a D. But for me, I'm an H. So I'm like, a whole step ahead of that. And I was just getting really frustrated with constantly having to adjust every single pattern that I used. But for a long time, I just didn't think I could do anything about that. In the meantime, I helped set up the Curvy Sewing Collective, and I saw more and more that people were saying exactly the same thing. Like, I wish I could just make something straightforwardly. So really, it was about a year ago, so it was October 2014, when it suddenly occurred to me that maybe I could be the one to do that.
Yeah, it's funny how sometimes you see something and you're like, somebody should really do something about this. And then you keep saying that and saying it to other people. And then one day you're like, actually, that person's going to just be me. Who's going to do it?
It's totally right. They say, be the change you want to see in the world. And I think for me, I'd had the thought in my mind that someone should do it. I mean, for literally years. But the thing that always held me back was, well, I don't know how to draft patterns. And even if I go into a class now, they're still not going to be good patterns, are they? They're like, I'll just be like a beginner. And the thing that really turned me is I heard someone say, if you wanted to set up a restaurant, you wouldn't assume you were the chef. Right? Like, running a restaurant business isn't about being good at cooking. It's about knowing how you find someone who's good at cooking and sending direction for them. But that's not what it's really about. So I had this kind of, sort of half light bulb moment, the dimmer switch went up 50%, I guess I could do it. But then I had this another, thing where it's but I don't know anyone who does. And then it was I had the literal, dimmer goes up to 100%. One night, I actually remember it so vividly, I was brushing my teeth. And I suddenly thought, actually, I do know a pattern drafter. I know one personally, and I hadn't really thought about that. So I brushed my teeth, and it was probably midnight, and I'm lying in bed, and I email her on my iPhone, and I'm like, this is a crazy idea, but if I were to try and do plus-size patterns, and to try and do them in big cup sizes, is that something you'd even be interested in? Because I had no idea how the system worked. And she got back to me about 15 minutes later and said, let's go for it.
Wow.
Love it.
Right.
And then that's basically when it was okay, this is actually going to happen.
Right. And I think when I first started designing patterns myself, I definitely thought I had to do everything on my own. Mm-hmm. I would go to the, fabric store, and I would look at these patterns and I would think, this person did this whole entire thing, like designed the cover, took the photo, drafted the pattern, designed the pattern, every aspect of this person mastered. Yeah. And that's why she gets to do this. And because I don't know how to do half or more of those steps, I can't get in. And then over time, I've realized that isn't true at all. I mean, it might be true for one person, but it's definitely not true for everyone. And so it was the moment you realized that you could get help was when you realized this could be
absolutely. And drafting is a huge, huge element of whether a sewing pattern is going to be successful or not. But it's far from the only one. And I think what I realized is I know my target audience like as deeply as it's possible to know them because I am them and I have lived in this world for years with no intention of setting up a company. I'm just immersed in this area. And so I actually have a sense of like what people wear, what looks good on figures like mine, what are the adjustments we usually have to do. And there were lots of very specific things that have gone into my patterns that meet those needs, some of which I've talked about, some of which actually I haven't, but people are discovering them themselves. And my drafter actually doesn't know a lot of that. You know, that was new to her. I was explaining the stuff and working with her on how to make these alterations. But ultimately drafting, you know, if you get someone who just knows what a great armhole is, that's a huge difference between your pattern being really successful and not being so successful. So it was like the coming together of those two things. Like I had a lot of like the insight into what people are looking for and what they want, together with other elements of my background. And she really has the technical expertise to like turn it into something.
Right. And when you work with a drafter, that's like contract work, right? In other words, you say, I'd like this done, she does it, and then she bills you kind of thing. And so there's not like a cut of royalties or something like that. Just to be clear to people, like, you know, as you would pay a photographer or a graphic designer to design your logo. Like she does the work and then you pay her.
There are different models. So for mine, yes, I contract pay her. Initially it was like, oh, that's so much money. But actually, if you get someone who is an industrial pattern maker, which is mine, she's capable of doing dozens a week, you know, of patterns. So she can churn through them like nobody's business. There are some people who are paid royalties. And there are also people who are like involved in the pattern company so much that, you know, they are effectively a co-founder. But for me, it's simply contract work paid by the hour.
And how do you recommend people find someone like that? One of the things I think is so hard is that there isn't a directory. Like, how do you, if you search online, you know, you're not going to find someone. And even if you do find someone, it's so hard to find someone locally where you can actually go visit them. I mean, is your person local? They're not.
No, my person's thousands of miles away.
Wow.
From me.
Okay.
So that was a challenge.
Right.
Although it works. So, you know, mine effectively came through like friendship networks from being in the sewing blogging community. There are definitely a few people who I know design for multiple indie pattern companies because not everyone's designing their own. I think there is actually like an implication in a lot of sewing pattern companies that the person running it designs the patterns, but in a lot of cases, or drafts them. In a lot of cases, it isn't necessarily the case. But it's definitely difficult. One thing, you know, you can ask people, but not everyone's willing to be open about that information. So yes, I think, you know, for me, that was one of the biggest challenges actually of this whole thing was trying to find out who does what, and how to get the resources. Just the other day, I finally found out another printer who apparently is one of the major printers in America of what I do, and I had no idea until now. Like 13 months in, and I've already printed a lot of things. I just discovered that apparently there's one printer above all the others that I didn't even know about, and I think this is pretty common. It's almost like we need a maker's row. I don't know if you're familiar with that website, but they're basically for people who want to do ready-to-wear clothing. There's now this website called Maker's Row that will basically tell you, here are pattern cutters, here are factories. I haven't used it myself. At one point, I was toying with the idea of ready-to-wear. But it's all there, and it would be amazing if the same thing existed for sewing patterns.
Right.
Maybe the market isn't big enough. I'm not sure.
Right. So let's talk about printing for a little bit. So the tissue that patterns are printed on is printed, it seems, universally by McCall's. Is that right? Is that what you found?
So mine are printed at McCall's, yes. And actually it was kind of funny because when I initially approached them and they sent me samples of other indie patterns so I could see who printed at McCall's, which was quite funny. But there are others. I understand that Simplicity also prints for some people, and also Palmer Printing also prints for some people, although I don't know if they do the garment tissue paper printing or not. But yeah, I use McCall's. And that was actually, I constantly chat with other sewing pattern company people. My kind of two closest friends, I talk every single day with Heather Liu of Closet Case Files. We commiserate and collaborate on things every single day. And also Jen Beeman at Grainline. We chat all the time. And Jen actually put me onto McCall's and said, okay, here's the person, contact them. And actually, it's an extremely easy process with them. They are fully set up to do contract manufacturing for small businesses. They do have a minimum run order, although it's 1,000, not 10,000, which a lot of people, for some reason, a lot of people have said it's 10,000. It isn't. Thank goodness, because you have a problem then. No, it's 1,000. And they're pretty flexible, and the prices are actually quite low compared to what you'd expect.
So let's talk a little bit about the relationships that you have, because I think you and I recently were looking at a survey that a woman sent out, somebody who neither of us know at all.
Yeah.
She doesn't blog, and she's not really a participant in the sewing blog community in any way, as far as we could tell, just from like some quick research. But she asked in her survey, it was a Google form that she had made, asking for basically all of the contact information for everybody that you've worked with to create your company, you know, the printer, the drafter, and all information that, and she just wanted you to sort of fill it out and send it to her so she could start essentially a competitive company. And it was a little appalling. I mean, I understand where she's coming from. She wants the information, so did you. So what's the difference between sort of how you approached going from basically, I know nothing about this, to now a year later, I have a company, to the way that she approached it?
It's a funny one, because I did feel very torn as we were discussing when I received that, because people helped me out a lot. I think there's a couple of really big differences. The one is, I only asked people for help who I already knew or had some relationship with. Now, this is the world of sewing blogging, so a relationship might mean I'm friends with them on Instagram. But frankly, if you comment on each other's Instagram constantly, you genuinely do feel like you know someone. You see that every day, and then you start to comment on their Facebook, and then they comment on your blog. So those people, like, I wasn't coming out of the blue. I was also extremely tentative at the beginning, and I assumed they wouldn't tell me. So I think the very first thing I ever did outreach on was, where do you get paper patterns printed? Not the envelope, but like the inside paper pattern. And I emailed like 4 people. 3 of them all got back to me and told me exactly the same thing. And the 4th person said, sorry, that's like my trade secret, which is fine. Although I know that they print at the same place. But it was very tentative, and it was like, I understand if this isn't something you can share. I just thought I would ask. And
it was one question.
It was one question. Now, that did escalate into other questions over time.
Right.
But I think the thing is, if you have relationships, like, the sewing world is incredibly collaborative. And I come from a very corporate background, where the most bizarre thing would be to call up your competitor and say, what's your sources? That's just would blow my mind. But in sewing patterns, like, people do share a lot more. But I think that there are also hard lines. Like, you can't ask someone how many they sell. You can't ask them about revenue. You can't ask them about how their sales split up. And I have never even deigned to imply to ask those questions. So I think there's sort of a sensitivity about it. And there are some things which, to all intents and purposes, are common knowledge. The fact that McCall's prints paper patterns, that is not a trade secret. Like, that is very, very open and able to be shared. So I am also happy. And I have actually already, I mean, it's hilarious because, like, I've hardly have any experience at this point. But I've had several people approach me already and said, you know, could I have a Skype with you for half an hour and we'll chat? I'm more than happy to do that, and I'm happy to share it. But you need to show the willing of having a relationship and a discussion, and not just like, here's a form, fill it out and send me back with phone numbers, please.
Right.
That's very different.
Yeah, agreed. So you touched on your background a little bit and your corporate experience. So I want to kind of backtrack a little bit, because I think in order to understand how you made all of this happen, how you made Cashmerette Patterns happen, we need to sort of think about your career and your career shift, because you do have some relevant personal experience to bear. So let's start with college and just sort of trace briefly your career path from the time that sort of led up to you quitting your corporate job and starting kind of going out on your own.
Sure. So I did medieval history at university, which isn't so uncommon in the UK, actually, because if you want to go into business, very few people do business degrees. Like, it's very common to do English or math or physics or something and go into business. So I didn't really worry about it. I just did a subject I thought was vaguely interesting. So I did a 3-year undergraduate, and that was it. And during my time there, I got a job with Procter & Gamble. So I never intended to go into, like, corporate-y business. I always wanted to do something creative. I almost went to art college, actually. But it was one of those situations where if you get certain grades, like, you're discouraged from going to art college and you're meant to do something more with your life. It's funny that I've kind of come round back to that in some ways. But I decided to go to Procter & Gamble because they did marketing, and I kind of thought advertising might be interesting. That might be a combination of arts and, like, businessy stuff. And also they offered to move me to Switzerland straight away. So I was 20 years old. I had a contract to move to Switzerland. They compensate you for being an expatriate. Like, you live a very nice life. And I thought, well, I'll do that. And then in a year or two, I'll move into advertising, or I'll go and work in television, which was my other big thing that I wanted to do. Or I'll go and work for the Red Cross or something. I'll do something artistic or meaningful, and then that will be that. So 11 years later, I was still working there. And basically, I worked in marketing and brand management at P&G. And I enjoyed it for the most part. I had ups and downs. I think everybody does. What really kept me in is they give you a lot of responsibility. It's very meritocratic. And I was very young starting in the workforce. I was only 20. And I really appreciated that. I was on an equal footing with 30-year-olds with MBAs. And I thought that was great because if I did the same work, like, why not? And also they kept on moving me around the world. And I'd always wanted to be an expat in my adult life. I'd been an expat as a child because my parents were. So when they said to me, do you want to move to Switzerland? I'm like, sure. And then every time I was about to leave, they'd move me to another country, and I'd be like, great. So I was in Switzerland for about 4 years. Then I was in Greece for 2 years. And then I moved to Boston when P&G bought Gillette. And all that time, I was mostly working on brand management. So I was doing new product development, packaging, pricing, advertising, consumer insight work, consumer research. It's very broad at P&G. Marketing doesn't just mean, like, making an ad. It's everything from the beginning to the end. And it's really, like, a great basic founding in, like, business management and marketing. Mm-hmm. And then a few years towards the end of my P&G career, I actually was about to leave because I wanted to go and do something in nonprofits. And instead, I had the opportunity when I was there to move into sustainability. So basically, that was about coming up with, like, environmental and social responsibility programs for our products. And it was very new. And I actually got put in charge of the department. So I did that. They put me through grad school, which was very nice. And I did that for a few years. And then I've only ever had 2 jobs. So after a few years of doing that, I then got my green card so I could leave P&G. And I moved and I worked actually for TripAdvisor for a few years. And I set up a green hotel program there. So I was doing a corporate sustainability role again, but within the marketing department. So that was really my background. In terms of leaving, I started working on Cashmerette Patterns 6 months before I left my job. And I actually didn't intend to leave it. So, or rather, I thought I would do this maybe for a year or two before I would leave my job. But the stars basically just aligned. It was like every single thing became like, you should leave and do this full time. So I had the opportunity to do it with a payout, and things had come to a natural end there. And at the same time, I had got a lot done, and we were at the point where we were like, okay, it's time to, like, roll our sleeves up and get on with things. So it was kind of a natural segue. And
how far into your time at TripAdvisor, when did you start the blog, the Cashmerette blog?
I started the blog when I was still at P&G. So I started my blog coming up for 6 years ago now. So I've been doing that for a long time.
So I think that's kind of an important point because it wasn't as though 6 months before, you ended up leaving TripAdvisor, you decided to start a pattern company and started from scratch. Like, you had a lot of foundation built when it comes to relationships with other bloggers and designers, when it comes to an audience that you'd built and other projects you'd done online related to what you were getting ready to launch. So, talk a little bit about sort of the importance in your mind of having that foundation established online before getting ready to go ahead and order thousands of copies of multiple patterns and invest a whole lot of time and money into doing that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There were kind of like two ways of thinking about that. The one is when I started, I had this kind of attitude at the very beginning of like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I have no idea. What do I do? And I realized fairly quickly that actually I had done many of the things you have to do in a pattern company already. I had not drafted patterns, no, or designed clothes, although I kind of had for myself. But I'd done like marketing and product development and product launches and distribution and e-commerce and a bunch of these things. So actually I wasn't starting from zero on that front. And then in terms of having built the audience up already, it's kind of funny. I have had a few people, I think it's kind of cynical, but who are like, this was always your plan. It's like, I am not a patient person. If my plan 5 years ago would be to launch this, I would have not made it 5 years before launching.
But I can see why they would draw that conclusion.
Oh, yeah.
If you didn't know you would look from the outside and be like, wow, all points led here. But that's not how the plan was.
No, totally naive. No, I mean, first of all, when I started, I thought anyone who could like make a T-shirt was like a genius. So it was a long process. No, so it's funny, you know, the fact that I already know my target group because I am the target group so well, and the fact that I already have this audience has been like, you know, crucial in how well it's gone so far. It's actually funny because I was chatting with my accountant before I launched. He was like, you know, obviously, like it'll take quite a long time before you have any revenue. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to be over optimistic, but you might be surprised. Like, I was extremely nervous because I had no idea if I would sell 1 or 1,000 on day one. But I said, I don't know. And I went in, you know, a few weeks in, and he was just like, whoa, how is this possible? How did you do this on day one? I was like, well, because tens of thousands of people came to my site on that day, you know, and the reason they did is because they already know me.
Right.
Which is huge. And it's sort of funny. I know that companies, someone was telling me the other day that companies like HubSpot are really now into this whole like content marketing, and they're basically telling brands who don't have a face and are just a brand, like, you need to write lots of content and blog and everything, which is fine. I think it's a little cynical maybe, and it's a little backwards. But for me, it's like, I'm the organic version of that. That's it's right. Like, I'd already been building up. And even for something like SEO, it's like, even before I launched, if you type in plus size sewing, like, you'll actually find me fairly early on, because I've been talking about it for a really long time. So I can't really take any credit for that. I mean, it's not, you know, people also ask me, like, what are you going to call it? It's like, why would I call it anything other than the name of my blog? Right. If my blog was called Jenny's Blog, yeah, I would have changed it. But I already had a name which works fine. Like, it's unique, it's great for SEO, and it had been established for a long time. So for me, that kind of side of things was a bit of a no-brainer. It is funny when I read entrepreneur books or I go to events and stuff, and they talk to me, you know, they talk a lot about knowing your audience. And I'm a huge proponent of that. P&G's entire marketing know-how is based on the idea that consumer is boss. So if you understand your consumer and you understand their unmet needs, and then how you'll meet it, and then how you'll tell them you do it, that you'll be successful. And I'm a huge believer in that. But yeah, it kind of came prepackaged to me. The same thing with, like, what does your brand stand for and what's your brand personality? Well, I mean, it's me, right? Like, it's based on my blog and people already know what I'm like. So it wasn't a case of, like, how do I concoct a personality for my brand? It was like, I already have a brand name. I already have a brand personality. I already have people who follow me. I already know a lot of them personally and deeply through my blog and the Curvy Sewing Collective. So that was kind of my jumping off point, which is obviously extremely different than the average business person.
Yeah, it is different from the average business person, but it's not different from the average sewing enthusiast. And I think it's important to sort of encourage people to, if you sort of want to break into this in some way, just start a site, start a blog, start an Instagram, start wherever you're happiest online, and do it as though it's your job, even if you have another job. In other words, pursue it with, you know, some rigor and passion, and just do it, and do it all the time and every day, and sort of be involved in it, even if you're working elsewhere, even if you have a full-time job doing something else, because it builds the foundation for your actual dream to come true at a later time. And so if you sort of wait and don't do it, you don't have anything.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said about authenticity in it as well. I think that people in the sewing world realize very, very quickly between people who are being authentic and it's them and it's their personality, kind of warts and all. Like, they probably don't always show you fully made up, or you show yourself goofing around or whatever. And then there are other people where you can tell that they're trying to sell something, and so then they're doing a lot of thinking about, oh, what are the highest SEO terms, or what should I do here? And I think the sewing world picks up on that extremely quickly. So my feeling, again, is like, if you really want to be involved in this world, like, you kind of have to want to be involved in it. Like, don't just think like, okay, I think I can make some money from this. What should I do? I don't know if that's going to work, honestly. I think you have to, like, genuinely be passionate and engaged with the community, because people can sniff out inauthentic.
And it's also a ton of work.
It is.
And so it's going to be difficult to motivate you, for you to feel motivated to continue. It might last 6 months, but it's going to take a lot longer and a lot more effort. And if you don't really like doing it, it's not going to keep.
It's true.
You're not going to be able to keep it. Today's episode is sponsored by Spoonflower. I spoke to Stephen Frazier, the co-founder of Spoonflower, and he told me a little bit about what he feels is important about Spoonflower's mission. Why have people generate the designs themselves? Why have that be part of it, and have them also be able to profit from it? Everybody who sells a yard is a 10%, I think, of the cost.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a co-entrepreneurial thing going on here as well.
Yeah, I think that really is a crucial part of the vision for Spoonflower. That marketplace is what makes Spoonflower more than just printing service. And what I sometimes describe Spoonflower as like YouTube for fabric. That concept is really important. Creating a platform where people can create new stuff, put their work out there, and the world can come to it and figure out what it wants to buy. That's the way it should be. That in its small way is how Spoonflower set out to change the world.
And I've always felt that there's, for a significant number of people, shopping on Etsy and shopping on Spoonflower as well is an artistic act in and of itself. So it's an artistic expression just to shop, because that you're shopping from artisan design products that that are sort of very niche and very sort of different from what's on the mass market, and that's artistic in and of itself.
And you're buying directly from a designer too. So in the same way that when you buy, you get this great sense of satisfaction when you buy at the farmer's market, because you're actually
handing your cash over to the woman who picked the asparagus.
Yeah, exactly. And when you buy a piece of fabric on Spoonflower, you get a thank you note from the person that designed it.
Right.
And they're like, great, would love to see what you make with it.
Right.
And that kind of connection, is just not possible in the sort of old retail world.
Thank you so much for your sponsorship of today's episode, Spoonflower. And now back to my conversation with Jenny Rushmore.
It is interesting, this whole it's a ton of work thing. I had a conversation with Jen at one point where she was saying, oh my goodness, I'm working so hard, it's so hard. And someone was like, but it's never work when it's your passion. And to some extent, right, that is really wrong. It's like, no, it's still hard work. And also you kind of devalue what someone's doing if you kind of imply like, oh, it's just your hobby and I throw a few dollars at you. It's like, no, it's a real business. But the flip side of that is, if I felt that posting to Instagram was only for my business, I think I would hate doing it. I think I would resent it and find it hard. But to me, things like reading sewing blogs, being on Instagram, writing my own blog, that actually doesn't feel like work. Like, I know it contributes to my business, but I enjoy doing it, and that's why I do it. And that's exactly the kind of thing where I think if you don't, it starts to come across, actually. Mm-hmm. And people realize that isn't coming from, like, a true place of, like, someone who's really joyous about this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. All right, so let's get down a little bit to the nitty-gritty. So when you decided to sell something, you had this blog for a long time. It wasn't really monetized. Did you have ads?
No.
Okay. So you were just blogging. You had the Curvy Sewing Collective. That's not really something you're monetizing either. So you didn't have a product for a long time. And then you're like, I'm going to have a product soon. So you're going to need a corporation of some sort, I'm guessing. I mean, some sort of structure. So what did you decide to do, and how far along in the process did you incorporate?
Yeah. So this was all a total mystery to me to begin with, because not only have I not been an entrepreneur before, but I'm in America where things are a little bit different. So my parents and my brother are entrepreneurs. I come from a very entrepreneurial family, but the things they could tell me weren't actually, in many cases, very relevant because things are done differently there. So basically, I started chatting with my accountant a few months in, just like, hey, I'm going to be doing this. I don't know anything about finance.
And he's the accountant who does your personal taxes.
Well, I've actually changed from him now, but he was, yes.
Doing just like your life.
Exactly,
okay.
Yeah. He was just doing my tax return. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, okay, well, you probably want an LLC, so have a look at it. So I did a bit of research. I'm like, I can do it on LegalZoom. So I mentioned this to him, like, I'll do an LLC on LegalZoom. And he was like, please don't. He's like, if they do it wrong, or something's up with it, or it isn't exactly how it's meant to be, that will haunt you so badly later on down the line. And, I do come from a very formalized, big, massive company corporate background. So my tendency is to want to always, play by the rules and, do things right first time. And it's actually a bit hard for me because often as an entrepreneur, that isn't what you should do. But it's my gut.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, so it was a lawyer friend of a lawyer friend of someone I worked with, said, okay, I'll handle this for you. I'll do your LLC. So we set up in that way. I cannot pretend to know the intricacies of why an LLC made so much more sense than an L Corp or incorporation. But when I looked at what other people were doing, they were doing LLCs too. And it seems to make sense for now. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll change it. But that's the kind of thing where I feel like I know enough not to be dangerous, but that's about it.
Yeah. Okay. That's I think that's a good point though, to hire a lawyer and get some real help. And
it's been so helpful to have someone. The only thing is, it's expensive.
It is expensive.
And it's hard because I struggle.
Because you don't have any money at that point. At that point, nothing's coming in. Money's going out. And seemingly just something that you can't hold on to. I mean, it's like, wow, I got a piece of paper saying that now I'm a corporation. What was the point of that $1,000,
But I decided early on that I was going to plan for success. I know that there are different ways of setting up companies, and I read this book called The E-Myth, which is excellent book. It's very famous. It's a little old-fashioned, but it's really, really, really good. And effectively what they say is you need to structure yourself at the very beginning to allow for growth and to allow yourself to be big in the future. Now, who knows? Maybe I won't be. Maybe this is going to last for a year and I give it up and I go back to a sustainability job. But because I guess I've worked in really big organizations and I understand the processes, I was like, okay, I want to be ready for growth and to be able to do that. So early on, I was like, okay, I'm not going to scrimp on the absolute foundations. I'm willing to and I'll use friends where I can. All my trademarking was done by a trademark lawyer friend of mine. Very nice. I haven't paid him. But, make him something nice. But other things I have paid for. And, for instance, I decided to have the proper accounting software, as soon as I started having any kind of significant cash flows. I'm like, I don't want in 3 years' time to be going through a shoebox of what I did at the beginning, trying to remember what on earth it had been. So I decided to do that. Of course, my bookkeeping woes are for another day. But I decided to do that. It is difficult, and I know that not everyone starting small businesses does this. Some people are just like, I'm going to work on the bare minimum I can that's legally acceptable until the point at which I can't anymore. But I decided to go a different route. Yeah,
and I think in some ways you allowed yourself to go on a different route because you had already sort of floated the balloon. You already knew that there was a market for what you were going to offer. You already knew that there were people who were going to buy it, that there was demand for it. And so because you had Cashmerette the blog for so long and knew all of the community for a long time, I think if you're coming up with a brand new product idea out of the blue and you really don't know if it's going to go anywhere, it can be better to go real lean and sort of not spend any of that money yet until you've put that product out there and seen how the world reacts to it. But you weren't quite in that spot.
I mean, I'll be honest, I was like sick with worry when I launched because I was literally like, my fingers went cold. I did not know this, but apparently when I'm really stressed, my fingers go cold, I've now discovered. And I barely ate. Maybe that's why my fingers were cold. Anyway, for like the few days, because a bit of me was trying to be Field of Dreams, right? Build it and they will come. But I was like, I don't know. People, my friends would ask me all the time, how many are you going to sell? How much money is this going to make? I'm like,
I have no idea.
I just don't know. I don't know one. I don't know 1 million. I don't know 100 million. Like, I have no idea. There are like boundaries that I guess. I mean, I look at other people who run sewing pattern companies and I don't see them on yachts. So I'm going to guess.
Right.
But I'm not sure. So, it was really nervous. But honestly, this is actually one of the biggest daily tensions for me is I'm so used to big companies and how things are done in inverted commas properly. And TripAdvisor like to think of themselves as a startup. They're not. They're like, $1 billion company. Like they're really an established company. And every single decision I have, I always go backwards and forwards between should I do the like cheap thing where you don't pay people and you try and get people to do things for free for you, or you get your friends in, or you do it yourself late at night, or should I pay someone and have a more professional response? And you just, it's hard. Every single decision that I have to make, I feel like I go between these two things.
Yes, and you're making all those decisions on your own as well.
Yeah.
So there's nobody there to bounce it off of and ask. So yeah, that's tricky. All right. So not knowing how many you were going to sell, having it be completely mysterious, but potentially not $1 million in the first day, knowing that wasn't going to happen. That was maybe the only boundary. But so how did you plan out how many to order, and sort of let's talk a little bit about kind of the patterns themselves. How did you pick which one was going to go first, and have you planned out all the other ones, all the other actual patterns? The Appleton dress was first, but there's others that have come out, and a second one's come out, the Washington, and then there's more plans. So did you sort of plan out 6 or 12, and how many did you order of each? And kind of let's talk about the logistics of that, the scheduling.
So the pipeline was definitely a sort of a big decision about what to do. So the first thing we did is develop the knit and the woven blocks, and that took over 6 months. It's really hard to make a block for like an H-cut bust, because the area between like the fullness of your bust and your shoulder and your neck is just, it's a crazy angles around here. So we invested a lot of time up front on doing that. And until I'd done that, I would have different ideas about things I was going to launch, but like I hadn't really done any planning. And initially, my idea actually was to launch with 3 patterns. It became very apparent that wasn't going to happen really quickly. But we actually started working on 3 patterns, and then ended up actually focusing on 2. So the Appleton and the Washington were basically developed at the same time. And in fact, they were tested in the other way. So the Washington was actually tested first. So that went through like more iterations because I had yet to learn a lot of things. And then the Appleton came second. I actually went backwards and forwards a lot on whether to do a wrap dress, which maybe now seems funny because I think people are like, it's a no-brainer that I would do it because I'm known for wearing wrap dresses. I have a wrap dress section on my website and so on. And to begin with, I was like, well, there are other wrap dress patterns out there. But this is an interesting one that, I discuss with like Jen and Heather all the time, is it's like, first of all, there are no unique ideas in clothes. This doesn't exist, right? Whatever you think you've invented, you haven't. Someone's done it before. So you can't hold yourself to like something no one's ever done before.
Right.
And then I realized that the combination of my sizing and my insight into what women want would make a tangibly different product. So in the case of the wrap dress, if you have a big chest, it's really hard to not have a gaping neckline. It's just really, really difficult. And if I'm honest, like all my other wrap dresses before did, I would just wear them with a camisole and then I didn't have to worry about it. And then in conversation with my pattern drafter, we realized that there were these tricks in drafting that you could do to make it not gape. And, I told my testers up front, like, it won't gape. And I think they were all a bit like, yeah. And then I started getting these, like, all caps emails going, oh, my goodness, it actually doesn't gape. I can't believe it. And I thought, okay, I think we're onto something. So I decided to leave with that one, which I think was a good decision because I think people associate it with me and it's a very, universally liked dress. Now, so my pattern drafter does not live in Boston. So what we actually do is we do it in chunks. I don't want to go too far ahead because I want to be open to learning. So I didn't want to design 10 patterns because who knows, maybe I would discover, or even that there was something wrong with my block.
Right.
Maybe when it actually went out, we'd be like, oh no, the bust apex is too high or something. And also, it costs quite a lot of money to develop a pattern. So you don't, from a cash flow perspective, there's only so much I can invest. Now, I don't have too many problems on that front in that I can do it. I don't have to do them one by one, which I think a lot of people do for like cash reasons. I'm able to do it in chunks. And it's also much more cost efficient actually to do it in a chunk. With a designer, like you just get their time and it ends up being cheaper than doing it one by one, which is good. So that's what I'm doing. So right now, another pattern has already been tested. They're not necessarily in order. Another pattern has been tested. That's final. All the photography is done. It's almost ready to launch, but it won't launch for a few months. And then I have one more in testing and one more ready for testing in January. So I have the next 3. I know what their following 2 are after that. And at this point, it is taking into account consumer feedback. And then we'll see where it goes. I imagine this is something I'm going to experiment with over time.
Right. Okay. And so can I ask how many the initial orders were? And did you sell out and have like a panic?
So you're actually quite restrained by McCall's minimums. And I think this is kind of like the open secret, is that because you can only order 1,000, almost everyone orders 1,000. So
you can only order 1,000, or you can order
or more.
You have to order more than 1,000.
You have to order at least 1,000.
And because people are wary, because hey, 1,000's a lot, sounds like a lot. Almost everyone starts with 1,000.
Exactly. And I asked around, and I was like, because I had no idea. Sure, right? Am I going to sell 1,000 on day one?
Who knows?
I literally didn't know because Colette does not post like we sold.
Right. I sort of wish they would, but that's just me wanting to know. Yeah.
But that probably is unrealistic. Well, although I will say this is actually, I say it's unrealistic. I come from corporations where you can buy that data, right? When I worked at TripAdvisor and I worked at P&G, you pay AC and Nielsen, and they tell you Unilever sold this much shampoo last week. And so if you were to launch shampoo, you would immediately be able to go and look and say, this is how big the market is, this is how many people sell. And I really struggled with not having that data because I'm a very data-driven person. Like, I want to know how many people sew, and then how many of those are plus size, and how many pants do they buy.
To me, it seems like that data is so hard to come by. Like,
it's not available.
The Craft and Hobby Association has some surveys they do, and the Quilt Inc. does some surveys, but like, the real survey, like how large is the home sewing industry's market? Where is
I've never seen it. I know that 1 or 2 bloggers have done surveys, but that doesn't make... There's no logic to that.
And how many
self-selected.
The other piece of it is how many people are buying indie patterns versus big 4 patterns.
Yeah.
I wish we knew what that was and how has it changed. Like, I'd love to see that data from 1980 to today. Let me see it. But where is it?
Well, and I feel you hear anecdotally like, oh, there's a big surge of people learning to sew. And it's like, anecdotally, okay, yes,
sure,
I see that there's a lot of people like 70 plus who sew. And now, or like 60 plus, let's say. And now there is a big surge of women in their 20s and 30s, undoubtedly. Like, a lot of the small sewing shops will tell you, yes, I have lots and lots of young people. And in the world of, like, the Great British Sewing Bee and Tilly and Project Runway, like, it's definitely encouraged people. However, how many? And are they still continuing to grow? And also, what's happening to these people is they're no longer beginners. I have absolutely no idea.
And how much do they spend on average? Yeah. And where are they going for their information and for their supplies and materials and patterns?
It's not available.
It's not available. Yeah. And it needs to be.
Yeah.
I hope somebody gets on that.
I hope so too. But yeah, so with McCall's, I ordered the minimums because that's what you do.
And you ordered the minimums of the Appleton and the Washington.
Yes. And then you have to order like the other pieces. So for my pattern, I have the paper pattern, and then I have an envelope, and then I have a booklet inside. So they're all printed at different places. They're currently assembled by moi and my friends. Thank you very much, friends. And we put them together. It is really difficult because, again, with inventory and forecasting, I just don't have enough data yet to know. So you get it. People have told me you get a huge boost at the beginning and then there's a long tail. That is 100% definitely true, right? So at this point, I don't know the exact number, but I sold, well over half of everything I sold on either pattern on the first day. Mm-hmm. Well over half. Okay. And who knows in the long term, what that percent will end up being. But it was a huge chunk. Mm-hmm. Then there was when wholesalers started ordering. That causes a big thing as well because they buy in big chunks. They don't just buy one pattern. But it's really tricky. And I was thinking the other day, when do I reorder? I don't know. I don't know when I'm going to run out of things or what's going to happen. And I actually ended up ordering slightly more for different reasons. So I don't only have the 2,000. I actually have more at this point, but it's very difficult to know.
Yeah. Right. Okay. That is so hard to predict. And you decided to do kits as well. So people can buy the print pattern. Can they buy the PDF?
Yeah.
The PDF version, the print version, and then they can buy the print version plus kit.
Yeah.
And so sort of what was the thinking behind doing the kits, and how have they done? Do you feel like it's done well? Have they been a good piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, so I do all those things, and I sell the fabric by the yard as well. So the reason that I started is it's really hard to find cute jersey for wrap dresses. This is one of the banes of my sewing life, because things that are produced for the home sewing market, like jerseys, they're just not in modern ready-to-wear prints on the whole. A lot of them look like children's stuff. They're really made for pajamas. And they're just not, what I would see if I went to a shop. My touchstone on everything is Boden. I love the clothing brand Boden from the UK, and I lived in their wrap dresses before I started making my own. And I was always I just want Boden. I want to raid their factory in the middle of the night and steal all their fabric. So I knew that other people would find it hard too. And I was told early on by another sewing pattern company person, got to watch out if you're making things that can't be made in quilting cotton, because a lot of people just don't have access. I live in Boston, and we have a few independent sewing stores, albeit with a really limited array of printed jersey. And I can get to New York, but if you're in the Midwest, and also the UK has a particular shortage of good printed jersey. So I realized that some people would find it hard to make my patterns. So I started looking at I wonder what would happen if. So I kind of started exploring what the wholesale fabric market was like. And I quickly, the other thing I did is I reached out to someone who actually owns an online fabric shop that I buy from all the time. Actually, this is actually a funny side note. So talking about not being able to decide whether to approach people about things or not.
Yeah.
So I couldn't decide whether it was totally beyond the pale to ask this person how she figured out her suppliers.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this email and I put it in my drafts, and I'm just I don't know, is this just so cheeky? Is this really, really rude? Or is it reasonable? I kind of feel like I know her, but I don't know her. I never met her. I don't know. The next morning I wake up and there's a reply because I accidentally pressed send.
All right.
And I actually decided in the morning that I wasn't going to send it because it was too bad. And she was very pleasant. She didn't say, no, I'm not going to tell you. She basically said, I have very long-term relationships with people, and, but I do believe in what you're doing. I think it's great, and, I'm willing to help out. But that was as far as she put it. So I was okay, I'm not going to push for names or numbers or anything, definitely not. My pattern drafter had a few names, so I contacted them. Anyway, a few days later, she emailed me, and she's by the way, you bought this one jersey from me. It's actually this black and white one with little birds on. And I know you really liked it. You posted photos of it. Here's the supplier's name. I know they just got another roll in. I was wow, thank you. That's so kind. So I called up. That was it. Done. And funnily enough, that kit sold out in 3 days. And so basically that was the beginning of okay, now I know a wholesale supplier. And then I started getting to know jobbers, who are people who go to factories and buy the ends of designer fabric and send it to you. Yeah, and then that's kind of how we started. So, so far I put together kits on the Appleton and the Washington. I can't say that I'll necessarily do kits for every single one. There is an element of you have to buy the fabric up front, which isn't nothing. You have to be able to store it, and it is hugely bulky. And you have to cut it, and I am extraordinarily bad at cutting yardage.
Oh,
I can cut a piece, but I can't cut
the worst.
But I'm extremely lucky that I have a few friends who are self-employed, or they do part-time jobs, so they help me do that. So don't worry, people, you're not going to get shoddily cut fabric from me. You're going to get nicely cut fabric from someone who works for me instead.
Right, and thankfully my kits are really small, so I can cut small pieces and I'm fine.
It's trying to cut 3 yards of fabric jersey is hard.
It is really hard. So, again, with locating these suppliers, finding jobbers is really hard to do. I mean, they're it's almost this sort of, it's not shady, but it's almost shady. It's really hard to find. Yeah. You can't just, if you Google jobbers, you're not going to find, here's a listing of 25 ones you can contact. Right.
It's funny.
It's hard.
Kathleen Fasanella, who runs the website Fashion Incubator, and also wrote a book, which is a guide to ready-to-wear manufacturing. She writes in her book about how it's almost like a secret code.
Yes.
And you have to be really careful in like how you phrase things, what you tell them. And basically they will actually lie to you. They will tell you like, oh, I don't stock that. When they do, because it's all about long-term relationships with them. And also, you know, this is one of the things the fabric shop owner told me is like, the only thing is if I put you in contact with this person, you're not going to be shown the same stuff as me because I get it because I've been buying for them for 20 years. So it's like, what do you do? So for me right now, I only deal with one jobber because I cold called a bunch and like, yeah, they weren't helpful. Or they sent me samples and they were rubbish. And you can just tell that they're trying to get rid of the poor polys on the new person, right? Because they don't know you. So, but actually what happened was that I only deal with one jobber right now. And when I was visiting my pattern drafter, the jobber was there. And so I met him, I chatted, like, he liked my accent, ha, ha, ha. Like, I put in an order, and then all of a sudden I get a call saying, oh, I'm going to be in Boston in 3 months. Do you want me to come in? So now I have an established relationship. Also, I'm ordering in larger quantities than a lot of people. Jobbers sell a lot to ready-to-wear designers for boutiques. They're only ordering like 20 yards of something. I'm ordering 200 yards. So that helps when you're ordering bigger quantities. But it is a bit of a crapshoot because, you know, you don't know the quality. You know, you have a little sample, but it's kind of hard to tell. Also, apparently secret of the industry, a lot of fabric comes with huge holes in it. And this really gets me. So, like, you'll buy, 150 yards and you'll be rolling it out and there'll just be massive holes in it. And you don't get a refund for that. It's just apparently a thing that happens, which is really hard when you're selling in, like, chunks. Because, like, I sell you 2.75 yards of an Appleton. And if I get to a yard and then there's an enormous hole, that actually hits you a lot, which makes inventory management really hard. Because occasionally, it hasn't happened very often, but occasionally you're like, oh, I still have 5 yards of this. I'll sell 2 kits. And all of a sudden you realize there's a massive hole, so you can't.
So does it worry you with your patterns going out to independent shops, which I know that's part of the plan, is to have them available at independent shops, that you're also now essentially a fabric retailer yourself? Does that at all conflict, or have you felt like that's fine?
I don't think so. I've actually had some fabric shops ask me if they can sell the kits, which doesn't work because, I already buy at the wholesale price, so I can't sell to them at the wholesale price. I won't make any money. But it's actually turning out to be fine. I mean, ultimately, I am also not a permanent stockist of any of this. So I buy a limited batch, and unless the very unlikely possibility that it immediately sells out, it's wildly successful, and more is available. But Jobbers is not more available.
No, it's not.
It's like a set amount, and then it's gone.
That's right.
There are other people, like if you buy from like Telio, who are like a very well-known Canadian wholesale fabric company, you often can get more if you want. But But no, I haven't had any problems right now with that at all. So
okay, I think that's important to know. And as far as working with distributors, have you decided to sort of allow retail shops to set up a wholesale account just directly on your site and order directly from you, or did you go with distributors, or how are you handling that?
So right now, I sell directly to retailers. So I'm on the Shopify e-commerce platform, which I really like. The customer service is insanely good, as in 24 hours a day chat, and they will go in and fix code on your site for you for free, which is kind of astonishing given it's like $30 or $80 a month, I think anyway, coming from big background. And so you can buy apps. So I use an app. Oh my goodness, this was days and days of research figuring out how to do this, but I use an app called Locksmith. So what it does is you tag every product with consumer or wholesale product.
Okay.
Then someone makes an account. They have to make an account. A regular consumer doesn't, but a retailer does. They make an account and you tag them with wholesaler. And Locksmith allows you to say, if someone logs in and is tagged with wholesalers, do not show them these products and only show them these products. And by doing that, I don't have to do like invoicing, purchase orders, do things on Excel sheets, which actually I was planning on doing. And Locksmith is $9 a month. So for $9 a month, you can have a wholesale system. Mm-hmm. So that's what I do right now. Obviously, the downside is that for people outside the US, there's shipping and there's customs. Now, I did work out, one sort of nice thing, which is that up to about 10 products, you can ship in flat rate envelopes. Mm-hmm. This was shipping, honestly, is the biggest pain in the head
really
of anything. But you can ship 10 products, 10 patterns for $25 anywhere in the world. That's That's not unreasonable. That's kind of okay for retailers. As soon as you get one more than that, though, it goes into variable pricing. And then they may or may not get charged with customs when it arrives.
Right.
Now, in some cases, there is zero customs, and sometimes there's more. There's no way of predicting it.
No.
You don't know.
And every country has a different de minimis, so there's no way to know.
But even within one country, like I've had some places that didn't get charged at all and some got more. So you can't build it into the cost, really, because you don't know what it's going to be. So, the obvious next step is that a lot of independent patent companies based in the US end up going to distributors. So it is something I'm looking at right now. It's definitely something I hear from retailers, like, we'd rather you be a distributor. The problem is that wholesale is 50% of retail, right? So you sell to a shop for half of what they're selling to the public. When you go to a distributor, from what I understand, they take then another 30% off the wholesale price.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, your profit compared to selling it directly,
you get like $2 instead of 12 or whatever it is.
Maybe. And like for me right now, like I don't have huge quantities, so I can't negotiate that much on my own costs. Like it's down to like, is it worth selling to more shops if you maybe only make $1? And I don't know, maybe it is. I'm being told by a lot of people that it is. And also maybe it's a long-term play, right? Like you do it now and then you work on getting your costs down. So it probably does make sense. But it's a tricky one and it's a hard decision to make. That's a classic one where people will tell you, oh yeah, I go to a distributor and I like it, but no one's going to give you their financial information.
Right.
So you can't like really figure out precisely what volume is required to make it worth it.
Right. It's hard. It's still a guess. Okay, so what has been kind of the hardest thing and what's been the most surprising or unexpected thing now that you are on the other side of launch?
Well, it's funny because coming from this family where running your own business was seen as like the best thing you can possibly do. I remember my dad is not one to give advice, but one piece of advice he gave me as a teenager was like, be your own boss as soon as you can. So I kind of idealized working for myself for a long time. I've been surprised by the fact that it's not necessarily making business decisions that's hard. Because, I've been working for nearly 20 years on launching products. So I have quite a lot of experience doing that. And I'm also fairly pragmatic, I have an I messed it up fund in my brain. It doesn't actually exist. And I've allocated a certain amount of money to me messing up, which, believe me, it's getting used up very rapidly. But to, give myself a break and be like, you're going to make mistakes, it's okay.
Yeah.
So the actual just, business operation side of it has actually been maybe in some ways easier than I expected because I hadn't fully appreciated the degree to which I'd done this stuff already. Much, much harder is working on my own. So hard in a way I hadn't anticipated. I've always thought of myself as not much of a team player, honestly, and, I'm best just doing things on my own. So I kind of assumed I would find that easy. But what I had taken for granted is I always worked in an office, surrounded by people. I'd always have at least a handful of friends in the office. I often had a team. Now, they might have reported to me, so I wasn't working with them, they were working more for me. But it's still people. And it's people to talk about things with. And, I think we were just talking about this on social media the other night. I really struggle, the distributors, right? I want to chat to someone every day about what to do. And I think a lot when I talk. It's the way I process. I'm not good at just sitting quietly and processing in my brain. I process by talking, which my friends will tell you. And I miss that. Yeah. And I also miss having anyone as invested as I am in the success. Because again, my friends will absolutely listen to me for half an hour, maybe even an hour. But then that's it. Right. I do not have someone I can turn around to every 10 minutes and be like, do you think we should do this?
Right.
Do you think we should sell fabric by the yard? Do you think I should get an inventory app now? Or when's the Excel going to get too much? And should I accelerate this one product but accept that the cost of goods is going to go up or not? I'm on my own for doing all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hadn't anticipated how difficult that would be. I am very much hoping. I have a few friends who work for me on a contract basis, hours here and there, and I'm really hoping that within the next few months, I can justify having one of them at least working part-time with me. But that's the thing that's actually surprised me the most. I had not anticipated that I'd find that the hardest bit.
Yeah, it is really hard. And, my husband can only take so much of me asking him questions. And I also have to do so much explaining. There's just a lot of backstory to understanding, and if you don't run a business on the internet, there's just a lot of internet stuff that you have to understand. And So it's one thing that he doesn't sew, and that's fine, but just even understanding like the way that this works is really
that's what for me is so valuable. Like I think of like Heather particularly as like she's like my virtual colleague because we literally chat every day, and these are precisely the things that we chat about. Now in many cases neither of us has done it, so it's not like one is necessarily teaching the other. Like we're both figuring out what to do about distributors because she just came out with print patterns too, and so that is fantastic. I wish we lived in physically the same place. We're actually only about 5 hours apart, but still we're not. But I agree, like I also have been trying to like connect with other entrepreneurs, but what I do is just 1,000 times different than having an app. It's like nothing to do with having an app. Like only in the most broad sense are our experiences the same. It's funny, I go to these events and like sometimes I tell people like, I sell a physical product and like you can just see them shut off. They're just like, oh, how 2005 that you sell a physical thing. Like I have no interest if you're not going to scale and like get $1 billion from a VC.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, for me personally, like I'm single and I live on my own. So, I spend a lot of time on my own doing these things.
Right.
But that's why I'm trying to like, make an effort to like reach out and connect with people as much as I can.
Yeah, in person. Yeah. All right. So tell us just where people can, we're going to get to our recommendation list in a second, but tell us where people can go if they want to sort of check out the patterns and see, see the kits themselves and see what they look like and see you on the cover and all of that good stuff.
I'm only on one cover before people get too worried. I won't be on everyone. So my Shopify shop is at shop.cashmerette.com, but the easier way is just to go to cashmerette.com and click on the shop link and you'll immediately be taken over there. So that's where I kind of live during the day. I'm also really present on the Curvy Sewing Collective, which curvysewingcollective.com. Instagram is like my big thing. Especially after the whole Cake with Cashmerette thing happened this summer, like my Instagram blew up. So I'm over there a lot, and I'm at Cashmerette easily. I'm basically Cashmerette on all social media. So on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and so on. I think Instagram is kind of where I hang out the most.
And just tell people really briefly what happened with Cake with Cashmerette, because some people I think, I don't know how, could have missed it, and so they should know what that is.
So really briefly, a random dude wrote a comment on a post I put on Instagram of a sketch of a swimsuit, basically saying that I looked fat and I should eat less cake. So the next day I'd made a dress and I put a nice picture of myself in the dress and I talked about it, and then I put a PS and it was just sarcastic, and it basically just like, oh, Mr. Troll, like, thank you for pointing out I should eat less cake. You can see how unhappy I am. And I was kind of twirling in this like fabulous dress, so obviously being sarcastic. And then 5 minutes later, or 10 minutes later or something, actually my friend Mary Danielson Perry of the blog Idle Fancy posted a picture of herself eating cake, reading my blog, saying, oh, great idea, like, let's all eat cake with Cashmerette, right? And I put the hashtag on my blog. So a few hours later, like, a few hundred people had done it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. I mean, it's so heartwarming and amazing to see people, like, standing up and in a really positive way, not in, like, an angry way or, like, down with the haters, just in a, like, let's all eat cake, which is an awesome thing to do. And then it took another leap, which was really crazy, which is that it got picked up by the Guardian newspaper in the UK, which is, like, one of the biggest ones in the UK. And then it went viral around the world. So in the end, I did like dozens of media interviews and I was in hundreds of newspapers and magazines and like hundreds of people on Instagram at this point. And it would hit different countries. It was quite funny. I'd wake up and like Brazil was eating cake or Japan was eating cake or Taiwan. Anyway, so that was kind of amazing. It was before I launched the business. I know that there are conspiracy theorists.
Of course there are.
Who think that I did it on purpose, which I have to say makes me laugh so much because the lack of understanding of social media and what makes things go viral is
Guys, you could have done it on purpose.
I would be living on a yacht.
Right.
Like, if I knew how to do that.
Right.
Like, I have been in charge of social media for like mainstream brands. Like that is not something you can like artificially manufacture. It was just the right time and the right image and the right hashtag and like the right whimsy or whatever. Anyway, so despite what the critics think, that was totally a coincidence.
Right.
But the thing that was that's been amazing for me for the business is, one, my Instagram like exploded, so I have a lot more followers now, most of whom stuck around, which surprised me actually because I thought it would collapse again, but it didn't. And second of all, like, help my search engine optimization because all of a sudden a lot of like very large media outlets were pointing towards Cashmerette. Whether it's actually impacted my business, like I have no idea, but it was a fun thing.
Yeah. Okay. So just to review that. So let's get to our list. I want to recommend just two things, and you have two things to recommend as well. So I'm going to start, and then I'm going to turn to you. So I just wanted to recommend briefly subscription to Fast Company, the actual magazine. I know it's bizarre because I read Fast Company online, and I have for a long time. I actually don't know that I even realized they had a magazine, like a print magazine. Like I started knowing what Fast Company was by reading them online, usually through links from Twitter. And then a friend of mine recommended that I get a subscription to the actual magazine, which I did, and I've had it for maybe 6 months now, and it is so great. I love Fast Company, the magazine. I read it on the airplane whenever I'm traveling. It's nice to have that print magazine. I read it before I go to bed, where I have no screens upstairs in our bedroom, so it's nice to have that print magazine there. And if you're interested in the internet, like in the way the internet affects culture and life and business and all aspects of like who we are and who we're going to become, then I think the writing is great and it's awesome. I just really love it. So I recommend it. I stopped my subscription to Martha Stewart Living and started my subscription to Fast Company. So maybe that says something about
magazine
me.
Subscriptions are also incredibly inexpensive. In a way I didn't realize. It's like you can get a magazine for like 20 cents if you subscribe.
Yeah.
Like, why not?
Totally great. And it comes and I'm psyched and it's great. It's the only one I subscribe to now and I really like it. So I wanted to recommend that. And you wanted to recommend something that's dear to my heart, which is Craft Industry Alliance.
Yeah, so I'm going to sound like a total sycophant here, but I genuinely love Craft Industry Alliance. So, I have been fortunate that I knew people who did the kind of business I did before I started. But, first of all, they only have a certain amount of experience. And second of all, like, there's only so many times you can go, hi, just wanted to ask you. But, since Abby and Kristen set up Craft Industry Alliance, I've been active in the forums. So that, for me, is the big one. I really enjoy the articles. They're great as well, although I feel like they're quite, well, not similar. They're an extension of what you've done, Abby, on While She Naps. And, I enjoy the extension, and they're on very interesting topics for me. Like, personally, it's like, I feel like I'm precisely the target market for them. So I love them. But the forums are where it gets crazy helpful. Because all kinds of people are in here. People who I would never have met before, ever, and don't have anything to do with. So just the other day, I prompted a question, and I was like, guys, self-publishing versus having a traditional publisher. Like, how does that work? What do you think? And now it's turned into this huge conversation in which so many people are sharing their personal experience, things I would have even thought of, very specific recommendations. People started popping up offering services to me. Like, if you're interested in this, call me on this number. And all of a sudden it's like you're in the secret cool kids group, right? And like you have access to all these people, and a very wide variety of people seem to be posting, and a lot of people with very established, successful businesses. Yeah. So it's not like one of these networking events where no one knows what they're doing and everyone's looking for help. It's like there's a lot of people who can truly help you on there, and they're very open to a newbie. Like I have started multiple threads now where I just throw something out and I'm like, distributors, guys, tell me about it. Here is my situation and here's what I think. Very collaborative. I don't worry. It's also closed. It's like members only. So I don't have a sense of like, the gallery are going to like find it and start like bitching about it online. So it's sort of a safe space in which there's really, really helpful people. So highly recommend it. And I make sure that I subscribe on my email. So like this morning I just woke up and like 2 people who work for publishers, like giving me extremely long and detailed, thoughtful stuff, not just selling their side, but thoughtful, like comments on it. And like, who knows whether I'm even going to do any of this, but I can tell you that that's an extreme help.
Totally. I'm so glad to hear that. And just to be clear, like Craft Industry Alliance is a trade organization founded by me and Kristen Link, whose site is So Mama So, and it's been up for maybe 3 months now. And it's, I'm so glad to hear that it's helpful to you. And there are a lot of publishers who are in there, which is great. Yeah. And a lot of other big companies are members. So Spoonflower is a member, and all these publishing houses are members. So and it's great because they're the movers and the shakers, and so you're in there and you're with them. And in a way that maybe you're not going to connect with them in a Facebook group, for example, or something like that.
Totally.
So it's very niche.
Abby did not pay me for that,
but I appreciate the recommendation. So okay, and I wanted to recommend What's Tech, which is a great podcast that I've been listening to. It's made by The Verge, which is another another online site, and basically each episode they kind of focus on one aspect of technology and just explain it. They have an expert on, so they'll explain like what's Minecraft, what's Uber, like what's an online meme. They kind of like just break it down. Like you've heard all these things, but like what is it? What are online ads? Like what is it really? It's like 25 minutes. It's not talked about in a way that's so esoteric and technical that you can't access it. It's very down to earth, and you come away from being like, oh wow, like what's Twitter? Like what is Twitter? Like they just explain it from the top all the way down, and so I've really enjoyed it, and I've been binge listening. I think I've listened to like 9 episodes in the last week, so it's great. I recommend What's Tech, and you wanted to recommend one last thing, which is Haptic Lab quilts.
Yeah, so. Often I really, really want to sew in an evening, but increasingly I don't because I've been doing it all day. And I do find that, like, sewing for me on a machine is a very engrossing experience. So I can listen to a podcast, but I can't do very much else. And sometimes I just don't have the energy. And I don't knit yet, although my brother is getting me some knitting things for Christmas, so I'm interested in seeing what I get. So I don't knit, which is a lot of what so many of my friends knit. So I was kind of missing something that I could do in a more like mindless way while, let's face it, watching the television. So I wanted a crafty thing that was more relaxing than sewing, which is a bit more active. So a more passive thing. And goodness, it was a few years ago now, and I don't even know where I saw it. But on a sewing blog, I saw this company called Haptic Labs. And what they do is they make quilting templates, but it's not traditional quilting. You make a quilt, but you are hand quilting the lines, and there's no piecework or patchwork. So basically what it is they sell you a piece of interfacing, right? It's a piece of interfacing that's been printed. And they started off by doing city maps. So you can hand quilt a map of Boston. And I was like, this is awesome. And they're small because you wouldn't, it'd be hard to do a big one. So they're like, how big is this? 3 feet by 2 feet. So I saw it online somewhere, quilt a Boston City map. And I'm like, amazing. So I bought it. And basically what you do is you make a sandwich of fabric batting fabric. You put the interfacing on the top and you pin it or safety pin it. And then you hand sew all the streets and the river. And it's so meditative.
And it's not embroidery. It's actually just with sewing thread.
It's sewing... yeah. Actually, is it? I think you can use either.
You can do either.
So the thing is that it's very creative because you can do whatever you want. So I've seen examples from them where they've done white on white. So it's like a true quilt. And you can't really see what it is. And then you go, oh my goodness, it's New York or it's London or Paris or something. Or you can do it using embroidery thread. And it's very, very obvious. And it's like an illustrated thing. Mm-hmm. And of course, the fun thing if you do a map is you can like put your house in. Or I know someone contacted me the other day asking me advice on it. And they're doing one for their daughter getting married. And it's going to be like landmarks around the city of like their life. So it's super cute. So I did that one a few years ago. I am doing a constellation one right now, a Northern Hemisphere constellation. Actually, as a baby gift. And Haptic Lab saw me on Instagram and actually sent me, this is going to be interesting, a full bed quilt size version of the Constellation one to do. Who knows how long that's going to take. Their usual ones, I think it's somewhere between 40 and 80 hours of work. But the whole point is you don't sit down with a deadline to do it. That would drive you nuts. Instead, you just sit in front of your television and you spread this quilt on your lap and you just sit there. And it's also very good, as a garment sewer, you don't do much hand sewing. And then when you do have to do it, you're often terrible at it.
Yeah, it's great.
Like, oh my goodness, I make your softies and I love them, but mine look so bad compared to yours because my hand skills are not good.
The hand skills, yeah. The more you do it.
And the quilting is great, yeah. Like, I looked at the quilt I was making the other day, and you could see visibly the difference between when I started and now.
Yeah.
And then just to complete the thought, what you do is you sew through all the layers and the interfacing up and down, which you just have to have a sharp needle and you're fine. And then you rip the interfacing off at the end. And it's this huge reveal. It's actually incredibly satisfying because you think it looks cool anyway, but once you take the paper away and there's no markings because you didn't draw on the fabric, you just see your pure stitches. It looks beautiful, and then you bind it, and then it's done.
That's kind of making me feel like you could actually print on interfacing your own design and do the same thing.
You absolutely could, yeah.
I mean, Haptic Lab's awesome, but that's a neat idea too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
It's a really printable interfacing. Is that a thing? That should be a thing.
I don't see why not. It really is just normal interfacing. Yeah. It's not a special thing.
You should be able to run that through your printer somehow.
I think
Interesting.
So. I think you just invented something new.
I know. Let's get on that. It's a new business. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Washing Apps podcast. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you very much for having me. It was fun.
It was great. So if you've been listening to the Washing Apps podcast, visit my blog, washingapps.com, where you can sign up for my weekly email newsletter. This Washing Apps podcast was brought to you by Spoonflower. Design, print, and sell your own designs on fabric, wallpaper, and gift wrap at spoonflower.com, or shop the Spoonflower Marketplace for millions of designs by indie designers. Join the Spoonflower community of DIY-minded individuals from around the world who appreciate quality custom design. Washing Apps podcast listeners can get 15% off your next Spoonflower order with the code ABBY15, ABBY15. Visit try.spoonflower.com/Abby for more details. And if you enjoyed the show, tell a friend about it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.